Now, the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment is meeting in Egypt today. The crucial meeting will finalise Africa's top priorities at COP27. A hot topic will be compensation for loss and damage, and it's important that Africa speak with one voice. Now, South Africa's Environmental Affairs Minister, Barbara Creecy, who's been there, is expected to address the meeting as well. Now, senior reporter Siphamandla Goge is in Sharm El-Sheik and joins us now for the update. Sipa, thanks for your time. Paint a picture of where you are speaking to us from this afternoon, and of course what's happening at COP27 this weekend, and this group of African ministers. A lot has been said about how important Africans' voice is at this conference, because they indeed are also bearing the brunt of resources being depleted, and the list goes on historically, and climate change now also having a massive impact on so many impoverished nations. Bring us up to speed.
So official negotiations and talk at the Conference of Parties, popularly known as COP27, are on recess. They will resume tomorrow. A number of issues and talking points were deferred to the week that will start tomorrow. It's expected that from Monday and Tuesday, issues that have got to do with adaptation, loss and damage, issues of climate finance, and Africa's special needs and circumstances, all those talking points and issues that Africa as a bloc is pushing hard to have resolved and to win the day will be deferred to tomorrow, which is Monday and Tuesday. So from Monday, it's the second and last week of these climate change talks. They've been going on for about a week, but last week it was mainly about world leaders coming here to pledge and give support to the ongoing talks. As we speak, there is a meeting which is underway. It's of African Ministers of Environment. They are having a closed meeting and session. They are consolidating their position so that when talks resume tomorrow, Africa's chief negotiators will be able to have policy direction and clear support from their political principals, the ministers. That meeting is underway. South African Minister of Environment, Fisheries and Forestry, Barbara Creecy, who leads the South African delegation, is part of that meeting. They are discussing a number of issues ranging from adaptation, loss and damage, climate finance, Africa's special needs and circumstances. Earlier on, the Minister of Environment in Egypt, who is the COP27 presidency, outlined the progress so far, which issues have been discussed from last week and which ones have been deferred to early next week. Let's take a listen to her.
On finance, which is always the big elephant in the room, conclusions have been agreed for the review of the adaptation fund. Other issues were not concluded, and it will continue on the technical discussion, technical negotiations on Monday and Tuesday. Adaptation. Report of the Adaptation Committee, no conclusions, and up to the presidency to take any proposals on board. For the procedure matters, procedure conclusion on Glasgow Sharm El-Sheik work program on the global goal on adaptation, also procedure conclusion on the national adaptation plan. So we have the procedural part here have been finalized. On the loss and damage, conclusions have agreed on the report of the Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage associated with the climate change impacts. Procedure conclusions on matter relating to the San Diego network under the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage associated with the climate change impact. Action for climate empowerment. Glad to announce that conclusions have been agreed for the ACE. The gender, it was not concluded, and the presidency will continue with the co-facilitator on the technical negotiations on Monday and Tuesday.
Now, Sipa, years ago, it always used to be a thing that there aren't enough African countries talking together when it comes to such important issues. But are we seeing an improvement in that regard? Is Africa negotiating as a bloc at these important talks?
At least that's what they are trying to be seen to be doing. Remember, these talks are very complicated. At the center of it really is the issue of global politics, international relations. It's also the issue of diplomacy. Now, most African countries negotiate as a bloc, but remember, there are some interest groups in this matter. You would have former colonizers trying to influence how their former colonies negotiate. That has been a major concern for many years, but today, African ministers have urged each other to say whatever they do, when talks resume tomorrow, they need to speak with one voice. They need to represent the interests of Africans and African development in particular, whatever position they take. Yes, there will be areas and instances whereby they have to compromise on certain issues, discussion points and things, but they have urged each other to say whatever we do, we need to go in there, negotiate as a bloc and come out with an outcome that will favor Africa's interests. Let's take a listen to the Minister of Environment and Green Economy from Zambia.
I wish to remind ourselves that as we are now participating at COP27, we naturally need to prioritize our interests as Africans, and I'm therefore encouraging all African states to remain engaged, to remain fully engaged in the ministerial segment of COP27, as this is the level which will ensure that the momentum built by the African group of negotiators is sustained.
Now, Sipha, just before we let you go, the issue around just energy transition, massive talking point. I believe we also heard President Cyril Ramaphosa speak about it as well. What's the continent's position been on this point this week?
Indeed, that's going to be one of the most talked about issues and topics at COP27. Already, South Africa is in the process of that just energy transition partnership. $8.5 billion has been committed by developed world. There are concerns as to the majority of that funding being loans. Of course, there is an element of grants there, but the bulk of it really is loans. So here at COP27, African nations have been urged to say whatever you do, you need to undertake this just energy transition in your own pace and in line with your own country's special needs and interests. But most importantly, you need to prioritize your developmental needs. I guess that's the message that has been shared and echoed around this meeting of African ministers of environment that is ongoing, to say, yes, we understand that we need to transit, but that transition needs to be smooth and we must undertake that within our own pace. We need to determine our own developmental needs. Let's take a listen to a representative from NEPAD.
In the context of just transition, we of course need to balance the change of getting to a green economy and a zero carbon economy, and that of the developmental interest of the African continent and the African people. It is therefore important that as we finalize this last week of negotiations, we give our negotiators, through the guidance of the ministers, the courage to change the things that we have to change in terms of contributing to this just transition, and to say no to the things that will jeopardize our ability to get to the developmental state that we have to for the interest of the continent and our people.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it with our ENCA senior reporter Siphamandla Goge joining us live there from Sharm El-Sheik in Egypt in front of the Hollywood sign. And I believe it's just quite a popular tourism attraction in that part of Egypt. And I'm sure Sipha will keep ENCA updated over